Stratified sampling. The population is divided into regions that are similar in some way, pertinent to what is going to be measured. Each strata is thought of as a homogeneous division of the population. What is homogeneous? Similar. Somehow they're similar. Strata are then selected randomly, and from the randomly selected strata, one can measure all objects in the chosen strata, or we can randomly sample from the strata if the number of objects in the strata is large and sampling every object is not necessary. Multi-stage sampling may be used, meaning once the strata are chosen, we may employ a simple random sample to get our final objects that we can measure, or some other sampling technique. Multi-stage implies that we will use more than one sampling technique to get our objects that eventually will be measured. As we'll see in a second, due to this sampling technique, how it works, not every sample from the population is possible. So this is different from simple random sampling. All right, so how does this work? Let's go back to our arena. So our question is, what's the average ticket price of a Trailblazers game? And as you might suspect, these sections are very costly because they're very close to the floor itself where the game's taking place. So all these are very, very expensive seats. Of course, the closer you are, the more expensive the seat gets, but I can pretty well surmise that these cost quite a bit of money. And then there's another layer, which also costs quite a bit of money, but not as much as that first layer. Then there's this final layer, which is the upper balcony seats. Also not cheap, but definitely not close to being as expensive as the first two layers. So if that's my question, what's the average ticket price? Then it seems like these rings form stratas. So all the seats here are pretty close to being equal in cost. All the seats here are, again, fairly close in cost. And these last row is fairly similar in cost. So then these rings are forming stratas, just to make this, again, simple. We might decide that we can break this up even further, depending on maybe the ends cost less because they're the ends and not the preferred, while these seats right here, right in the middle, are the most preferred seats, so these were more expensive. But we can play around. Let's keep this simple. So now notice I've taken each of those sections and put them under their appropriate strata. So this is strata 1, which consists of all these sections that are, I would guess, are very similar in price. Strata 2, next section, strata 3, the next set of sections. So I can come over here and again start enumerating 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on. And just like before, I need to pick stratas now. So from strata or sections, and I'll pick them from each strata. So maybe from strata 1, I will pick 3 sections. So I'll go rand between, and again, looking at the enumeration, rand between 1 and 22, and let's say I pick 3 sections. So it turns out to be section 11, section 1, or section 111, section 101, and section 109. Now I can decide at that point how I'm going to sample from these sections. Let's say I decide to just measure every single seat in there. That's one way. Again, that's another subject, but that creates my first strata. Then I'll come over here and grab something for my second stratas. So let's say I grab 4, since there's more seats now. But again, this has to be thought out. Right now, I'm just kind of demonstrating how this works. There we go. So now I grab 4 more numbers. 15, 27, 14, and 3. So 15, 27, 14, and 3. And then I'll do the same thing for strata 3. Then again, I could decide at that point how I'm going to sample from each of those strata, but this is called stratified random sampling. Each strata is somehow similar from in some way or shape. In this case, each strata is priced very similarly priced. Lastly, I just wanted to make clear this last statement. Due to the way the sampling technique works, not every sample from the population is possible. You'll notice under simple random sample, it is possible, like suppose your sample size was only 150, just by the way it works, it is possible but not likely that every seat lands in strata number 1, section 103, every single seat. Not likely to occur, but it could happen. Well, under this type of sampling technique, that's not possible. So I'm going to grab a few from here, a few from here, and a few from here. That means that it's impossible for every sample to appear. That's not going to happen under this sampling technique. And that's kind of one of the differences between a simple random sample and something like a stratified sampling.